Deaths in a house fire allegedly set by their father shines more light on the problem of domestic abuse. Sabrina Wilson talked to leaders of two agencies that help victims.
On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the U.S., according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And people who work with local domestic abuse victims say there's help available. Dr. Trishanda Grays is executive director of the New Orleans Family Justice Center.
First of all, we have a 24-hour hotline. So if anybody who is needing services, they can reach out to our 24-hour hotline. I'll say the number. It's 504-866-9554. We do have an emergency shelter as well as two transitional housing annexes.
That they don't have to suffer this alone. Domestic violence is a community issue. It's not a woman's issue.
Darlene Santana is executive director of Metro Centers for Community Advocacy, which also has a 24-hour hotline.
We don't have the transitional anymore, but we do rapid rehousing.
And what does that mean?
Rapid rehousing is for survivors who become clients of Metro, where we have grant funding to help with the deposit and rent.
We have a playland downstairs. We have a Hope Clinic where people can come in and see a general practitioner or receive forensic exams. We offer civil legal services, advocacy services, case management, medical. We have a housing program. We have education and employment.
Because sometimes they're running in the middle of the night, don't have time to pack a bag, right? So we have the clothes, food. We can help with transportation if they don't have a way to get here.
And from the Family Justice Center's vantage point, the abuse is becoming more severe.
So not to diminish domestic violence, but in the past, maybe we've seen a slap or a punch. Now we're seeing much more harsh crimes than that. People are being strangled, in which that, if you're being strangled, then sad to say, but the next thing is probably you're going to be murdered.
Still, neither agency requires victims to call police.
We don't require a police report because someone may not be ready to involve the police at this time. So we help survivors where they are with no judgment. We're trauma informed and we don't judge.
And it's not just about emergency services.
And we also offer holistic healing activities in which someone comes in and does massages, Reiki, there's drum therapy, there's acupuncture, there's a self-defense class.
And Santana says domestic abuse victims should not feel ashamed.
It's not their fault. It's not anything that they caused or they did.
Agencies say more resources are needed to help domestic abuse victims. Again, the 24-hour hotline number for New Orleans Family Justice Center is 504-866-9554. And the crisis hotline number for Metro Centers for Community Advocacy is 504-837-5400. Liz.
Thank you.